starved this year.
Time for dinner.
No one thought it could ever happen here. They are an army of international terrorists.
America has not been invaded by a foreign enemy in nearly 200 years.
Their target, America. Their objective, control.
18 hours from now, America will be a different place.
Now, only one thing stands in their way.
It's time to die.
Wanted a war.
See you in hell.
He gave them one.
Send me a postcard.
Chuck Norris. Invasion, U.S.A.
On January 16th of 1991, as the Soviet Union was collapsing and the Cold War coming to an end, George H.W. Bush publicly announced a new campaign of American dominance, which he called the New World Order.
This is an historic moment. We have in this past year made great progress in ending the long era of conflict and Cold War. We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
Vladimir Putin told Oliver Stone that in the year 2000, he asked President Clinton if Russia could join NATO, which he said made the American delegation very nervous. They were not interested in world peace. They had different plans. In 1997, the Project for the New American Century was founded by William Kristol and Victoria Nuland's husband, Robert Kagan. In September of 2000, they published their agenda entitled Rebuilding America's Defenses, which outlined an ambitious and aggressive plan to achieve world dominance, starting in the Middle East and ending with Russia. The document acknowledged the fact that their world domination efforts would trouble American allies and could therefore be a long process absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event, like a new Pearl Harbor. A year after publishing this, 2,000 people were in the World Trade Center and blamed on a small group created by the CIA. And with this catastrophic and catalyzing event, the plan for a new American century went into action.
About 10 days after, when I went through the Pentagon, and one of the generals called me and he says, "We've made the decision, we're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq, why?" He said, "I don't know." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, "I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
George H.W. Bush's son, George W., began a propaganda campaign to sell the American public on overthrowing Iraq.
I take the threat very seriously. I take the fact that he develops weapons of mass destruction very seriously. Either you are with us or you are with the...
When the lies became obvious, George W. made jokes while reveling in the blood of the innocent.
Those weapons of mass destruction got to be somewhere. Nope, no weapons over there.
Secretary of State Madeleine Albright said that millions of Iraqi children was worth it.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died when in Hiroshima. And is the price worth it?
I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
The power-hungry cabal, made up of close-knit families who practice multi-generational child and mass mind control, began overthrowing sovereign nations. Innocent civilians became the new norm for U.S. foreign policy. But their plan for global domination was failing, and starting in 2020 with the scam, they began targeting U.S. citizens. They have become desperate, and they are going for broke. Innocent Palestinians to spark a war with Iran, and sacrificing the people of Ukraine to hopelessly take on Russia. These families are getting old, and they are fighting for their lives. There is too much at stake for them to ever give up, which makes them more dangerous than ever. But they are few, and we are many, and they must be stopped. We do not warn of false to try to predict horrible events. We warn of false to try and prevent them. They are the norm for starting massive conflicts. They are based on lies, and so we only hope that the truth will make them futile. There is now talk in Kiev that the real president of Ukraine, Victoria Nuland, has become so desperate for NATO troops to enter Ukraine and continue this U.S. proxy war against Russia that she is willing to kill innocent locals with a radioactive cloud and blame it on Russian forces. After that report, documentary filmmaker Chris Emery, who has spent years researching PATCON, the U.S. intelligence operation to use false as a way of criminalizing American patriots, reached out to me with some information that shows how this is standard operating procedure for the black hats in our government.
We had done our first movie premiere in March of that year in Salt Lake City with an attorney that we actually interviewed on the film by the name of Jesse Trinidou. He was approached by a command team leader that was in charge of 10, including himself, basically commandos, to blow up the Browns Ferry nuclear power plant in Athens, Alabama, under the Operation PATCON. And then Jesse went into detail about what PATCON was, which would later morph into the Waco attack, and then the Oklahoma City, and then our current present-day ramification of that was J6. That nuclear power plant is still standing today because this command leader says no, that violated their rules of engagement that they were taught in their special operations ever since he was, a rookie commando. And he says, we are not 27 innocent U.S. civilians, no matter how much money you're paying us. Each of his partners, there were 10 commandos altogether, were given duffel bags full of cash. Each were given $5 million. They left it in the parking lot in the wee hours. He said between 2:30 and 3 o'clock in the morning, they literally left these duffel bags in the parking lot, in the far end of the parking lot, away from the nuclear power plant, and drove away. And they basically told their commanding officer at the Pentagon to F off. We're dealing with people that are of the occult, or in a dark corner of the universe that we can't even imagine. And Nuland is in that pack with Merrick Garland and several others, without a doubt. She needs to be brought up on treason and indicted, put on trial, and thrown in prison, and the key tossed away.
We also spoke on the subject of what looks to be the beginning of a false being set up on the southern border, with World Economic Forum puppet Greg Abbott now calling for a civil war.
What in the world? Why did it take him almost 2.5 years to gear up? I think it's disingenuous what he's doing. There's poor ranchers and the private citizens within 50, 60 miles of the border have gotten their land, their homes robbed, their ranches decimated, trash, human waste, windows broken into, property damage. He could have put the thumb screw on that a long time ago. Why he chose to do so now is beyond me. They're much more keen. They have the operative radar, on high alert now, and they'll be able to hopefully weed out a lot of these operatives that, whether they know it or not, are being paid by the feds to be the fly in the ointment and get a lot more people in trouble. It's just going to be a reincarnation of J6 all over again.
Expert on false and the southern border crisis, Michael Yawn, is also warning people not to fall for the trap.
And we already know that the so-called, I call it OGUS, the occupational government of the United States, we already know that it's out of control. We already know that the only rules that it plays by is anything it can get away with, it will do, right? We already know that. We saw January. We see Americans have to show their ID and get searched and whatnot to get on airplanes. Meanwhile, they got illegals, straight up invaders coming across the border by the thousands every day that can board aircraft without any ID. There are no rules. We are clearly being hunted. And the American citizens, patriots, are clearly being hunted. They're looking for any excuse to go to war, and they will do it. Obviously, there's going to be a very serious war. It's clearly coming. Don't walk into their traps. Do not do it. Why would you go to Eagle Pass, which is so baited, when Abbott clearly could close the border if he wanted to? This is clearly a wrestling match. This is clearly a show. That's the Thunderdome. Don't go.